It all started when we came out of Africa, the shadow tribe. In a nutshell, over the past 333 plus generations, we have been agrarian, which means we have been growing our vegetables, legumes, and grains. We have started breeding animals, eating bread, and the animals have transformed from the raw, wild, lean meat into the meat we eat today, which is full of fat, trans fatty acids, and so on. As our diet changed and we started incorporating sugar, we now suffer from chronic disease and just a lack of self-awareness, which is the cause of other preventable ailments. Our ancestors who baked the first bread grinded their grains in a way that did not allow the grain to be crushed too much, so the wholeness of the grain was even more kept than in today's whole grain and whole wheat products. I am disappointed in modern medicine for the very reason that it insists on using nutrition as a science to a very low degree, as told by one of my friends who is a medical student and a professional, straight A student, by the way. Medicine barely grazes the topic. Still, our sugar and dairy and wheat consumption is why we are sick to begin with. Cheese is addictive. All breast milk was designed to be addictive, with an opioid chemical in it, including cow dairy, in order to have the offspring survive. Traditionally produced meat and low quality simple carbohydrates further increase the odds of uncertainty for a good reason. All specific dietary causes aside, the simple reason behind all uncertainty that when we left Africa for Europe, there was the Ice Age, which taught us to hunt and have to hunt in the first place in replacement of eating fruits and vegetables with some additional animal sources, which is what we see in the Bible the majority of the year. Someone eats lentils, another eats exclusively meat. That's one biblical example of how agriculture has changed our lives and put us into competition even more. You see it in history. It is written that we have replaced natural vegetables and all things natural because unnatural became a norm. This transition is expected with every change, but our transitioning has only just begun from an evolutionary perspective. It all started hunting as basically a coping mechanism to replace something during the cold season. People who live in a cold climate tend to have more appetite towards meat, scientifically. If you are northern looking in appearance, chances are your genetics make it so meat you should absolutely consume in winter. Many vegans, however, say today that they can afford veganism and regardless of their budgets, and because it is a moral decision. I completely respect that because veganism is logical. And God is too, in certain situations. Veganism is extremely logical. As I said, modern meat and food production in general are flawed, and nutrient levels are dropping due to a decrease in the quality of soil our food is grown in. It is that simple because of the imbalance in plant food production and the treatment animals receive. Food is changing. People who write food journals to learn what their bodies can and cannot tolerate say they only eat one food, and make sense because the omnivores who, unlike Michaela Peterson, for example, Michaela Peterson, eat everything offered to them, do not make sense because the people who eat quality steak 3 times a day for years on end do not eat what the average person consumes, which is a lot of toxicity actually and hormones. The food and produce have toxins in it. And the reason why people like Michaela Peterson are so healthy is because what the meat does not have. It is because of what the meat does not have. The hormones, which are dependent on upbringing of the animal and environment, feed, and experience. The pesticides and herbicides are stuck on non-organic plant produce the less we wash and peel them. Women are still raised to be the housekeepers. I lead a toxin-free household, and I am so fresh and clean. That you would be surprised. You would never guess that the reason why I am so fresh, good looking, and good feeling is because of the things I do not use and the things I do not consume, rather than the things I do use, including regular soap, surfactants such as cocoa glycoside, cleaning agents such as washing soda, apple cider vinegar, lemon juice, and baking soda, essential oils, and so on. Many of these items are used for internal consumption. For example, apple cider vinegar, 1.5 tablespoons diluted in water, is great for blood sugar control 30 minutes before meals or the night before. Generational or individual healing starts with your origins. I have found that African people tend to have a different temperament due to the warmth. Their pain is experienced differently. A woman's pain is never evident or inevitable. However, it makes sense. Even in cold climate, though the cold makes women even needier for containment. Gia Lambert, author of Low Tactics, writes that before the invention of the Disney princess, the only reason men married was so that they could, quote unquote, stop renting and buy, basically women. European culture and Christianity have made it so women had been property for a very long time now, in tribes without external figures of authority and in an uncontrolled, indeed natural environment. Women, like men, had been part of a community, more so. In religion, though, and in bread and in jobs, all of which had been created by men and for men, the man is the builder, the creator, and the one who must test the waters, because if he does lose his duty, the elements will test him instead. Traditionally, men had been surrounding women like a clamshell surrounds a clam. That is the most unchanged form of constitution of human groups. People never quote unquote age out of family or community. It is still our personalities and our changing with age that keeps us where we are. An adolescent, for example, will not ignore his or her best interests because peer pressure may serve his or her survival all the time. However, when he or she develops an identity, he or she is freer to lead, more free to lead unlike ever before in a community setting. Excitement builds on bliss, and fulfillment is found in togetherness rather than in the modern epidemic of quote unquote, I am alone because I am an adult and I am mature and treated with respect because I know how to be alone. End quote. In individualism, being alone is like a basic need. Going back to the diet route, it is clear why our emotional, mental, and physical bodies have combined as one, not adapted to the modern environment we live in, which we created. It is historically traceable, official, documented, and it is our responsibility. We tend to feel shame around what feels out of our control. For a lack of a better option, which tends to be trust. Shame is, however, a cover emotion. Sometimes going too in happens, and it is only then that we associate the action with the reaction of shame due to the knowledge we have about the consequences of our actions. Women's cyclical nature makes them quote unquote crazy and quote unquote unpredictable from men's eyes, as I have noticed. But there is a valid reason for women feeling more self-conscious around their eating habits. For example, it has never before been discussed that women need different types of food every week of their cycle, but at the very least every phase in it. Once, my boyfriend at the time had told me lovingly, "Why feel shame? This is who you are." When reality told me that he doesn't know me. And indeed, I have PTSD around predicting my quote unquote miserable future rather than trust in my cycle changes. In reality, I used shame for coping with the shortage of knowledge I had in my body's needs and about it. Needless to say, my intuitive compass of emotions had also been meddled with because I grew up around quote unquote toxic eating habits too. I do not want coping and alternatives. I want healing, organic, raw, even wild material. Unprocessed, unfiltered truth and knowledge and wisdom. We cannot heal before it gets ugly, because quote unquote ugly is just separation reinforced by our societal beliefs and standards, yet a natural part of existence. There is a beauty about ugliness, which is a lack of recognition though. I do not agree with Gia Lambert on the quote-unquote princess treatment took over after the Disney phenomena. Princesses and quote unquote saviors reach back prehistoric times. A woman needs masculine containment, period. The end. It is true, however, that adult women have changed because now they need to hunt more than ever. Their strength, both mental and physical, is challenged unlike ever before, and many get upset with that righteously. In fact, research shows that women may have been and had been hunters as part of their tribe with the only catch being that their tribe surrounded and protected them the same way society protects and surrounds the modern successful man and woman in exchange of labor, usually. The very bread that has sustained man is not the diet many Western cultures. This is not the diet of women. She eats and craves fruits and vegetables in periods, and in many Western cultures, this problem manifests as obesity and chronic disease, neither of which are limited to the physical realm. Let me elaborate. Women thrive on plant foods and plant medicine, quite literally, and regardless of witchcraft, because the female need for constant cyclical quote-unquote settling every month has never ceased to exist, just like the moon has never disappeared from the sky. Even though the moon changes every day, it comes back to its usual appearance every single month, bringing tides and similar changes onto the planet and itself and all Earthlings. We are all impacted by it. Had the moon, though, not belonged to the Earth, though, we would not be aware of it the way we so dearly know it. A woman's luteal phase and the settling hormone of progesterone is crucial for a woman's body to allow her to bleed in the first place. Experts have found that they themselves receive better treatment when they are low on progesterone and instead are non-menstrual, meaning they lose their periods, which is unhealthy for a woman. In other words, this just goes to show that our human society has not been built for women at all. It has been built for men. If at any point the protective masculine shell, so to speak, changes, that instantly reflects in a woman's behavior, and it is only in the luteal phase that she is super critical of everything, because in her follicular phase, she is most ready to get pregnant. There is an exception to her quick reaction time in terms of intuitiveness, and that is dietary. We would laugh at the concept of quote-unquote almond dad, but somehow the almond mom has become a statement. Somehow we approach female beauty, health, diet, and parenting way more harshly than how much we judge male behavior, not only because women are socialized to be self-sacrificers, but also because they are literally weaker. There is, in a man's world, more to judge her for. So much more. The exception of quote-unquote bread is overwhelming. The female ancient body, the ancient female, the prehistoric Paleolithic cycles have not had a chance to adapt to a man's world and to his changes, which is why we see a random man admitting he would have eaten bread for the rest of his life if that had been his only option. While mom still calls the police on her daughter's quote-unquote disappearance after 4 days of not having answered the phone as a biological and legal adult. This is not normal. And the fact that parents worry so much about their children for running out of food or anything is not normal either. And yet it is quite normalized. We no longer ever, since COVID, frown upon people's wearing of masks publicly, but we still somehow know that this is not how things should be. Or is it not? The second reason I disagree with Mr. Longer is because we used to only settle, men used to only settle by women for the sake of exploiting them back, so to speak, according to Dr. Longer. There can be many reasons to marry within a community setting, including arranged marriages, for example. Where I live, an English man can still be quote-unquote honey-trapped into such a deal with a baby excuse. And when ego is not involved in the intention of establishing a marriage, even if the quote-unquote glue of God is the child to be raised, statistically or statically, marriages last longer, unlike in utterly free Christian America. A lack of available options is the creation of new ideals and goals. The thing with goals is that they are not systems that can be sustained. Therefore, depression tends to follow. Still, a systemic formation of habit and a goal-oriented one can stimulate and mirror each other. Skinny, so to speak, only becomes a goal when healthy ceases to be an option. So many problems and illnesses are due to deep-rooted disorders with the emotional body. All eating disorders, including anorexia nervosa, binge eating disorder, and bulimia, all of which I have experience with, are best treated together with the environment that disrupts the emotional body. Our societal obsession with weight loss is ignorant to the fact that health and leanness are inseparable, and that spoiled, soft, feminine, and ultra-compassionate men do not make women belong to them. And so women are getting harder, which is a problem, because women can be incredibly spiritual and incredible emotional healers and leaders when surrounded by community or the needed masculine containment. In ancient Egypt, women had been revered as superior and more sacred than men, being considered the source of life and wisdom. It was believed that a man who attained great knowledge, spirituality, and power could earn the right to wear a long-haired wig, which symbolized his attainment of a level equal to that of a woman. Spiritually, the woman was seen as a source of strength and protection for her man, and it is a saying that still circulates today that behind every successful man is a stronger woman supporting him. Manhood is earned, femininity is born with. Equality will not be fought for, except for by and because of men. If men become passive, they remain feminine. If men earn the wisdom and power of a woman born with strength, they have not acted against their masculinity. It takes, however, a woman's permission to get to a level equal to her, because if she is treated to be less than what she actually is, or if she is competed with, it is only then that a woman will either compete back or fight for equality, for a lack of a better option, and that is not good for the well-being of either her or the man. Potential is worth. We underestimate our power when we do not respect ourselves or the people around us the way we could. This is why individualism separates. Codependence, a form of how human relationships are established, is a form of addiction preceding individualism. Because of this, the latter is a vibrational improvement compared to that which came before it, but the next stage will be interdependence. Interdependence, just like my relationship or any relationship, takes two or more. The more, in this case, the better. We cannot want ourselves out of needs or wants or desires, but we can need people because we love them. As such, the more people surround us to contain our needs as resources, the more we can rely on them. On the other hand, if we are separated in our conviction to be quote-unquote physically independent, not to mention the emotional aspect, we train ourselves to not need people for the very valid needs that we have. The truth is that quote-unquote sin, originating from a different language, implies missing out, as in missing a take, not because one has done something, but because they have not. How else could we train ourselves to be the most tunnel-visioned, self-absorbed version of ourselves than through individualism? The shadow tribe liked to distract. It missed focus. Individually speaking, the shadow tribe liked to self-sacrifice. A cologne used to escape the selfishness the selflessness was meant to disguise or make up for. The new community is one where selflessness would not exist at the expense of self-love. The new community is a group, not a cult, aka the shadow tribe, that will accommodate for people's skills, talents, knowledge, well-roundedness, multifacetedness, wisdom, and power in the most efficient and sufficient or optimal way, without limiting women to being men. A woman without a man is like a clam without a clamshell. A clamshell without the muscle of a clam is like a lifeless stone, indigestible, only hard, spectacular or interesting, but not whole, not healthy, not wanted, useless. The enemy of man comes back through the back door. Women's deprivation, especially sleep, around